Tata launched the Punch in a segment where SUVs didn't really exist. Nonetheless, it was a knockout punch because it became quite a success. Now Hyundai, seeing that, brought out the Exter, wanting to grab a piece of that pie. But which of these two SUVs should you buy? Ladies and gentlemen, hi, my name is Dhruv Paliwal. You're watching autoX. Let's get started on finding out the answer to that question. Now before we get started, you should know that the Tata Punch we had on test was a friend's car and is a slightly older model. Tata has since updated it to include a sunroof, but mechanically, the SUV remains unchanged. Now, relatively speaking, I think the Tata Punch looks the more dominant of the two SUVs here, and because I think it's got a lot of muscle hiding underneath all those curves. Now as you move towards the rear, come to the side of the car, let's have a look at what kind of tires the Tata Punch is running. And you've got a 195/60 R16 section here. That means it's running on 16-inch wheels. The alloy wheel design, well, it's a dual tone design, looks cool. The wheel arches, they've got cladding over on them, but I have to say this here, the wheel arch cladding, it's a bit too thin here. And why do I say thin is because as you move towards the side, you see that the cladding on the door is quite thick. Now it's got that chunky muscular look, but it doesn't look proportionate. As far as the side line, the roof line is concerned, it's slightly angled up, it's raised up and gives the Punch that presence of a jacked up SUV, something obviously we all love, and it's obviously got the ground clearance to go with it as well. And as you move towards the back, you kind of see that Tata tried to do just the right amount with introducing funky elements into the Punch because of these tail lamps, and you've got a little bit more lines, a few more lines here doing their part to make the Punch stand out. The Exter is the complete contrast of the Tata Punch because right here from the face, it is so in your face. And I say that because Hyundai has used multiple different design elements on the front to make it stand out, and it does stand out. In fact, the Exter looks like nothing in the Hyundai lineup right now in India. Another thing I really like about the Exter's face over here is the fact that it's got a very flat front, so it's doing well enough to highlight that SUV quotient. Apart from that, I think there's a lot of cool lighting elements that Hyundai has placed on the front. This H LED pattern over here and the headlights which are placed a little bit lower down, I think they all look pretty cool. Now as we move towards the side, first let's have a look at the tires, and over here you're getting a 175/65 R15 section, and that's where the Exter falls a little bit behind because this is severely under tired compared to the Punch. And I'm not talking about how it looks over here, but I'm talking about the width that the tire is offering, and even the alloy wheel, that's a size smaller. Although it's a dual tone pattern over here, similar colors used as the Tata Punch, but the design over here is much cooler. I think the Exter also takes it in the case of the wheel arch cladding because it's quite thick here. On the door, the cladding stays kind of proportionate. Now as you move towards the rear on the Exter, you notice this shoulder line, and it's not angled upwards like that we've seen on the Tata Punch. As you move towards the rear, again the design elements that Hyundai seems to be using, multiple elements seem to be really coming into their own over here, because the tail lamps, again they have that H pattern that we also saw in the LEDs up front. Also you've got this nice piano back finish with this pattern over here, and this you also get to see on the back of the Exter. One thing I would like to say here is that Hyundai has added a bit more mass to the rear end of the car. They've tried to give it that squared off SUV look, and trying to do that in a car that's kind of only 3.8 meters long has not really worked well in their favor, because it looks a bit punched up towards the end and it looks like the proportions are a bit off.
Now, while you'll spend some time admiring the exterior of a car, you'll spend a lot of time sitting in its interior. And that's why it's important to fall in love with the interior of a car. Let's start with the Tata Punch. Let's start with the things that I love about the Tata Punch. And that's the first thing in the first row is the dashboard. I think the dashboard has a really subtly well-designed look to it. It's got a lot of elements coming into play here, but it never looks overpowering. Second, I love how these air vents have been designed rectangular, simple, subtle, but with a use of a bit of color around them. And they seem very practical to use as well. There's a lot of heft to how you use them, and they feel really solidly built. So that's a big plus. Next, let's talk about the seats. The seats, quite soft, and you feel really nice sitting into them. You sink into them really well. And these headrests, these are adjustable, and I'll tell you why I'm talking about them being adjustable, because, well, that's not the case in the Exter. The things that I don't like about the Punch over here, the steering wheel design. First of all, the design feels a little old. Second, these buttons, well, they've always been flimsy on Tata cars. Next, you have a semi-digital instrument cluster over here. That's not really, well, it's giving you all the information really well. It's not like it's not doing its job, but in terms of design, it feels a bit dated. So is the case with the screen over here. I think the screen, it's this floating configuration which feels a little bit old, which feels a little bit in your way when you're talking about the aesthetics, when you're talking about the use, the versatility, the practicality of the cabin. Lastly, another thing I would like to say here, the switches, while they feel really well built, let me say that, the quality is really nice. Again, the design, not so much. Now, as you move into the second row of the Tata Punch, things remain pretty similar in terms of seat comfort. The seats feel really nice to sit in. They feel really snug. Obviously, you don't have a lot of bolstering here in the second row, but that's good because then you can fit 3 passengers reasonably well. As far as the space is concerned, well, you can see the front seat is kind of set to my position. This backrest could have been a little more upright depending on how you like to drive. But nonetheless, I think I have enough space to tuck my feet here underneath the seats. I think I have enough knee room here that my knees are not touching, and I have a good amount of headroom. Another good thing is you get an armrest over here, and the adjustable headrests at the back are another big boon because they add a lot more comfort, and obviously they add their own bit of safety quotient as well. Apart from that, there's not a lot of features here to talk about. You don't get any kind of charging ports, you don't get any kind of air vents, but well, I mean, you win some, you lose some. Now, with the interior of the Tata Punch done, it's time to step into the Hyundai Exter. And immediately I have to say, I am super impressed. For starters, there are no obvious negatives in this car. The dashboard looks thoroughly premium. I think that's one area where a lot of people will be like, okay, maybe the dashboard on the Punch is better. I like the one in the Exter personally, but this is obviously going to be subjective. Apart from that, the seats again feel well supportive. The bolstering is nice, keep you nicely, snugly fit in. Yes, the one obvious negative is that you do not get adjustable headrests over here. And that is kind of a safety issue, and also obviously taller passengers won't be that much comfortable. As far as the steering goes, well, in this case, this steering has been used in previous Hyundai cars, and still it looks good because I think the design overall has been good from the beginning. The buttons over here feel really nice to use, unlike the Tata Punch. The instrument cluster is fully digital over here. It's giving me a lot of information neatly packed into one nice layout. Again, the touchscreen over here, it looks a lot better than what you see on the Tata Punch. And yes, while this does have that freestanding design, it's not as intrusive into your eye line as in the Tata Punch, and in fact here it falls underneath the dashboard. So again, same goes for the AC buttons, controls over here, they've been neatly laid out. The switch quality, I think, is one step below the Tata Punches in terms of heft to the switches, but there's nothing that's being left to You know, there's nothing you'll want out of these switches more, and the way they look actually feels a lot better. The AC vents, they're kind of this rectangular design in the center, and these round designs, these turbine like designs on the end, they add a bit of flavor, let's say, to the cabin. Now the story continues from the first row into the second row of the Exter, and let me start by telling you about how you sit. Compared to the Punch, you've got a lot more slanted backrest, and I for one do not find it really comfortable, but it is going to be again a personal preference. I think on longer journeys this might not be that comfortable. For shorter journeys it still stays pretty good. As far as the leg space is concerned, I have enough space to tuck my legs underneath the front seat, and this seat is set to my driving position. And Hyundai has made clever use of space here by scooping out the rear part of this front seat, which makes you look like you have acres of knee room here, which is obviously going to give you a positive mindset when you're sitting here in this cabin. Now obviously even the Punch and the Exter both use a lot of black inside the cabin, so space does feel a little bit hemmed in, but that feeling is a bit more prominent in the Punch than in the Exter. The seat is again quite decently flat, but I think it's going to be easier to fit 3 people next to each other in the Punch than in the Exter. You also don't get an armrest over here, which I think is a major miss. Where the Exter takes a leap forward are these AC vents. I mean, in this sweltering heat, AC vents can be a big boon. The Punch outrightly does not get them. You also get this charging 12-volt socket over here, which you also get in the front. One thing I am a bit surprised about is that while you don't get adjustable headrests in the front, you get them in the rear of the Exter. I don't know how that's happened. This should have been in the front as well, but at least the fact that you're getting in the rear half of the cabin has to be a plus.
Another area where one might get confused when picking between these two SUVs are the features, and in that area, both get the essentials like projector headlamps, LED lighting, a touchscreen, a sunroof, a digital instrument cluster, steering mounted audio controls, fully automatic temperature control, automatic headlamps, and a reversing camera. Though the Exter's touchscreen and camera are of a better quality, but then the Punch offers better audio quality. Another unique quirk of the Punch are its 90-degree opening doors, which aid better ingress and egress. But then, the Exter has a dash cam which records from 2 angles, inside the cabin and outside as well. Not just that, the Exter also offers more boot space than the Punch, making life easier on road trips.
So now it's time to find out what these cars feel like to drive, what they feel like from the driver's seat. And again, as has been the scheme of things, I'm going to be starting with the Tata Punch. For starters, the Punch has a 3-cylinder petrol engine, and surprisingly, refinement is not an issue over here, which it sometimes can be with a 3-cylinder engine. But as far as power delivery goes, there is a bit of a want from my end, because the bottom end of this engine is where you find torque to be a little bit lacking. But as you start to rev it, the power does come in before tapering off around 5,500 RPM. But it's safe to say the sedate driver won't really have this complaint. It's the enthusiast who sometimes wants to hurry things up. They might not take to it so kindly. Next, let's talk about the ergonomics. And this has been a problem with Tata cars over the years, where the pedals, the seat and the steering wheel seem to be misaligned. So nothing is in line and you're kind of hunting for the right position. This manual gearbox here, while it's not the smoothest affair, it doesn't feel the most precise, it is quite fun to use. The throws are short, they're snappy, they slot into place pretty quickly, and you have a ball of a time going through the gears on this engine. One complaint I do have here is the brakes. I'm not saying the brakes are not good. The brakes are actually pretty good. This car can stop quite well, but the brakes, they kind of act like an on-off switch. They're not like a dimmer switch, how brakes are supposed to be. With that aside, I think let's come to the real highlight of the Tata Punch, and that has to be its ride quality. And it's got to do with a lot of things. I think Tata's got the suspension tuning of the Punch really bang on. No matter potholes, highways, cities, slow speed, high speed, the Punch just behaves like a magical carpet, and that has to be its biggest USP. I think that's one of the reasons, places where it actually does better than the Exter. Another reason here why the Punch feels so nice to drive and it actually aids the handling of the car are the wider tires. The Punch just feels more solid. Swift direction changes in the car again feel a lot more solid, and that's primarily because this car is running on 20mm wider tires than the Hyundai Exter. Now as I step out of the Tata Punch and step into the Hyundai Exter, the first thing that comes through is the refinement of the Exter. Now obviously this one has got a 1.2 litre 4-cylinder petrol engine, and that just speaks volumes about refinement. Now as I said earlier, the Punch, refinement's not really a problem. But refinement is about the smaller things in life. It's about the finer things in life, and that is what comes through as you get into the Exter. It's quieter. There are no vibrations over here to deal with, and that really speaks a lot about an engine's character. And speaking about the engine, this one's got more character because while the one we are driving here is an AMT, and there's a reason why we are driving an AMT. The Punch that we were driving earlier actually belongs to a friend. As far as this one's concerned, this is a Hyundai car and they only had AMTs on offer, but that one's a manual and this one's an AMT, so it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison, but still we wanted to give you the bigger picture. And in that sense, when you start to drive the Hyundai Exter, you immediately realize that this one, despite being a naturally aspirated engine just like the one on the Punch, this makes better power. And by better I don't mean more. What I'm talking about here is that it makes power all throughout the rev range. No matter where you are, just put your foot down and you get a move on. And in fact, when you rev this one to its red line above 6,000 RPMs, this actually sounds better. Now let's come to the transmission. We've got the AMT on offer over here. Now first of all, the Punch, the transmission seems to be nice. As I said, it was a joy to use. As far as this AMT is concerned, refinement continues to be the name of the game, and that's a good thing and a bad thing over here, and I'll tell you why. The good thing is that the shifts, they are buttery smooth. I just went through a gear shift and I could not even feel it, and that's the good part. But to make those shifts buttery smooth, the transmission takes its own sweet bit of time to get a move on, and that when you're driving with very light throttle inputs, when you're driving at a very sedate pace, that's fine, you don't really feel that. But when you're trying to get a move on, then it feels like the transmission is the only thing that's holding you back, because this engine, it doesn't mind revving out. One quick way to get around that problem is just throw the gear lever into manual mode, or you can also use the paddle shifter that the Exter does come with. And when you actually shift closer to the red line, then the shifts are slightly quicker. It's only when you're shifting down in the rev range, say around 2000, 3000 RPMs, when you feel that the transmission is taking its own sweet time to match the rev so that you do not feel any jerk. And I think that's been done because, as I said, refinement is the name of the game for the Exter. It has to be its biggest highlight. It is its biggest USP. Now let's come to the ride quality of this car. I think suspension wise, Hyundai has almost gotten it right. Its low speed ride quality is pretty good. It's only when you come to high speed ride quality and the road's a bit topsy-turvy, that's where you find the Exter floating about a little bit, which kind of takes away from your confidence of driving this car. It's time we've gotten to the hardest part of the video, and that is to give you a clear winner between these two cars. And I am sorry to report there cannot be a clear winner between these two cars because they are both equally good at opposite ends of the spectrum. Let's start with the Tata Punch. The Tata Punch will appeal to you if you are someone who's looking for a safe choice. And by safe, I mean obviously safety first. It's got a handsome safety rating, it's got a decent amount of safety features, and even when it comes to styling, it comes to the feature set, it is a very safe choice because you're getting all the basics. In terms of styling, the car continues to look good even despite being the older car here. And that means that the Punch will appeal to you if you are a more sedate car buyer. Talking about the Exter, Hyundai has come into this fight with a completely different approach and is trying to woo you with, well, say its looks first, its feature set second, and I have to say this, that the refinement on offer in the Exter is a tad bit more than the Punch. So you like the Exter if you like showing off to your friends that you've got a new car that looks really cool, because the Exter does look really cool. In terms of price, both these cars are pretty much equally priced, so it's not going to make a lot of difference which one you go after. All that's going to matter is if you want the safe choice or the bold one. A lot of effort from the entire team went into making this video. So if you liked it, show us some love, hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the autoX channel for more such cool automotive content. And thank you so much for watching.